My name is Jason Schaefer, and I am welcomed here this morning or afternoon by a couple of my colleagues. We are all from North Broward Preparatory School in Coconut Creek, Florida. We are a K-12 family of schools run by the Meritas Corporation, and we've got 10 schools around the world, from Las Vegas to China, and we represent one of our 3 Florida schools. What I'm going to present to you this afternoon is something that I began using 3 years ago, and the circumstance that I used it under might help set the stage for why I use it and how it could be helpful to you. We were going through a phase in our school, and we were changing management systems, but I had to teach a summer course, and in that summer course there was no management system in place. We were in between Edline and then transferring to Skyward. And so I had to teach a summer course, collect assignments, collect grades, track students, give them feedback without any system in place. And so I decided that because of the nature of the course I was teaching, which is a course I'll be speaking about tomorrow called Personal Branding, we use social media and we teach social media. And so the idea was, how can I take a tool that I would like the kids to master and actually incorporate it into our everyday use, so it becomes natural, it becomes something that the kids can use. Now, as a byproduct of turning to Google Plus for this, I actually found that it not only changed the way I could communicate with my students, but it also changed the look of my classroom overall. There was a time when my students, and this might not work, but when my students would have binders that look like this. Especially when I taught at the middle school level. About 10 years ago, when I started teaching 6th grade world cultures, my first year teaching, as many people probably remember, was a lot of handouts, a lot of essays, a lot of papers, and this was the result. So when I got to high school, especially when I started using Google for everything, I decided that this is not what I wanted and what the parents didn't want either, and we'll talk about why. So I had to eliminate that look, but of course we're all educators in here, and so this is what I felt like. I don't know that it ever got this extreme, but my life felt like this. I have my briefcase here, and it holds a lot, and I could probably fit half of that in here, and what I was doing was taking it back and forth with me to work every day. So I would collect 100 papers a day, because I always want my kids to be doing something. So to do something, they're going to give it back to me to assess. Even if for informal assessment, I'm going to end up coming to my house with this. My wife, who's here, would see these papers piling up. My classroom would look like this. And so besides the students' binders, I was also looking for a way to alleviate the paper in my life. And so what I accidentally stumbled upon was Google+. This is not something I ever used in my personal life. I am someone who's been using Facebook for the last 5 years, Twitter for the last 3 years. Google Plus to me was like the ugly stepsister. I didn't know why I would use it, why I needed it. Now I can't live without it. And so I'm going to share my experience with you today. And for those of you who don't know what I even mean when I say Google Plus, right? Google Plus has been sort of historically known as the redheaded stepchild of social media. And Facebook and Twitter are the more popular sites. Google has sort of tried to gain traction over the years, and up until this year, really had a hard time doing it. With the bringing out of Google Classroom, I think there are more teachers who are starting to get a hang of it. As I keep presenting this at all these conferences, hopefully there are more teachers adopting this as well. In my own school, we have about, I would say, 10 teachers who are emulating some style of what I'm going to present to you today. So today is not going to be about what Google Plus is, but I sort of feel like we have to start there. I want to spend the most or the majority of our time together sharing with you how I use it, so that you actually have something to take back with you when you go back to school on Monday. I can't believe I just said that out loud. So Google Plus, for those of you who have never been there, literally looks like Facebook. It also looks like any other social media platform that you might have ever played with or used in your personal or professional life. But there are some cool features here that those other sites don't offer. But I also want to tell you that the reason I turned to this, as opposed to just telling my kids to log on to Facebook, was because I wanted to create a space for them that was geared only in their educational life. So I didn't want them to mix and match all of the things they were doing privately, because that brings up other issues itself. A kid posts something to their Facebook page, and now it's part of my classroom. That could bring up problems I didn't want. So the fact that nobody was using Google Plus was actually a benefit to me because it was a fresh start, right? And so that's something that I want to look at. But I don't know how easy it is for you to see. For those of you who are currently using Google without the plus on it, you're probably using Google Drive, Gmail, Picasso maybe to store your pictures. And what you're going to see today is how I incorporate all of those different features. And what Google Plus ends up being is just a way to present the material. And it's two ways. I present the material to them, they present it back to me. And you'll see how that works throughout this presentation, which I probably won't get to the end of. So here's what I came up with as my top 6 ways that I use Google Plus in the classroom, right? So we start off with sharing of materials. And when I say that, I don't just mean files. We can share anything from a PDF file to a Google Doc to a web-based video, whether it being YouTube or anything like that. But I can also share blogs and articles. So when I go to the New York Times and I want my students to read an article, I don't need to print copies. Almost every single professional article nowadays has a share button on it. You can export that to anywhere from, Facebook to Twitter to Google+. And so what you're going to see is how we created that environment. So it's also a record of student work, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. But what I'm talking about here is I can literally now, like social media, type in a username, pull up their page, and everything my students have shared with me over the course of the year or 4 years, if I've had them for multiple years, is still there. This is great for parent conferences, right? So when I have a parent come in and say, what did my student do this year? It's not me fumbling through papers anymore. I literally will type in their name, pull up their page, and in 13 seconds or less, every single document that they've ever created in my class is in front of their parents. And for those kids who are slacking and their parents want to be more helicopter-ish, I can share with them directly, and their kids don't even have to know about it. So if you want to be sneaky. So when my students are absent, or when I'm absent like I am today, my students are working through Google+, and every time they submit a lesson, I'm getting an email. I can take that off, I can deactivate that feature, but I like to know that my kids are working. So if I don't get 100 emails a day, I can go back the next day and say, how come you guys didn't do anything while I was gone? But we can have a conversation. In fact, right now, if school wasn't over, we could do that with my class through Google+. Written feedback. I read Mark Barnes' book, Role Reversal. If you have not read that book, you need to read it tomorrow. It will transform your teaching. It will transform everything you do in the classroom if you buy into the philosophy, which I did. It basically teaches teachers to stop talking so much, which is sort of the antithesis of what I'm doing today. But the idea here is make the kids do the work. And so through Google+, they're working, and I'm spending my day not preaching, but giving them feedback on the work they're submitting through Google+. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. Interactive study guides. I no longer play Jeopardy in my classroom before a test. I no longer give them a handout with 20 review questions. Now I submit the questions on Google+, and they work through them all together as a class. And then Hangouts is cool if you want to have virtual field trips, things like that. So what do you need to get started? Right? If you want to be a Google+ superhero, there's only 3 things you need. You need access to the internet, you need kids with computers, and you need a school that's going to allow you to use social media. The kids are already going to be willing to do it. The first time you introduce this to the students, their eyes light up, and they're going to test you. If you can get away with using this, if your principals or superintendents allow, they're going to test you. I'm going to turn my back the first day of class after I get these kids signed up, and there's going to be a kid who, while I'm not looking at the board, is typing, hey, look, this guy's going bald, or something like that. And so they don't realize that that's actually a lesson, because now what I teach them is, hey, by the way, what you just did has been recorded, and everything you do here is recorded. So I actually promote them passing notes now, because everything's done here, and I can see what they're doing. And that's the Google Hangouts feature that I'll show you in a little bit. So this is my page, and this is actually a copy of my page from about 6 months ago. And what you'll notice here, and the reason I show this, is because there's a number of how many people have actually visited my page since its inception. And 6 months ago, there were 288,000 views on my page, which tells me one thing. My kids are looking at what I'm posting. And I don't know if when I hand them a worksheet or when I hand them a stapled copy of notes, if that is going right into their binder, if that is being read, if that is getting stuffed in their school bag. What I know now, at least, is that there are 288,000 times someone has looked at my page to pull up a document, to watch a video, to do anything that I've shared. Truthfully, that number has grown. I no longer have 351 students who follow me. It's up to like the 580s and over 500,000 views, which again, it's not anything meaningful other than the fact that I know the kids are looking. I know they're using it, which is not something that I could have done if I was just handing out papers. So when we talk about presentation of materials, I'm going to just link real quick to my actual page live so I can show you how this works. But what I do is I create something called circles, and that's one of the features that really takes Google Plus over and above what the other social medias can do. I have created a circle for every single one of my classes that I teach, and I have 6 classes throughout the day. So I'm sharing with a circle, but I don't necessarily have to share with every single one of my students all at once. So if I have something I want to share with period 1, but I'm afraid period 3 might see it ahead of time and I don't want them to, I can literally share with the period 1 circle. Now the students are doing the same thing. They're creating a circle for my class. And so when they share something with me, they have the choice of sharing it with me privately or sharing with the entire circle. So what you're looking at here is actually the share button. So like at the top of your news feed, you would have what would you like to share. And here are your options. You can share pictures, links, videos, or even calendar events. And then you decide who. I can share this with the public, and everyone in the world would see it. I can share it with one particular teacher or student. I can also share it with whole circles or multiple circles. And this is the part that I like best. We're going to test the internet right now. And I just want to show you what this looks like live. So this is my actual Google Plus page. Yeah, we're up to 518,000 views, which again, I'm impressed by that for some reason. So these are things, and what we're looking at now is how the public can view me, and this is stuff that I've shared publicly. Most of my information I share privately, but there are some times where I come across something that I want maybe their parents to see or something like that. So let's say today, I want to share something with my students, so I'm not going to go to my profile because that just shows what's on my page. I'm going to go to my home page, and that's going to take me to a news feed that looks similar to what you would find on Facebook or something like that. So here's what I've got, right? I want to type the kids a message, right? Hey, everyone, something like that, right? I could then upload a picture, a link to a website. So I have a website, right? I want them to go to www.about.me. Now, Google should recognize it, and it's going to give a cute little thing if there's one available. So the kids are going to see right away where I want them to go. So this is great when I want to share a YouTube video, right? So I want to go here, I want to share a video. I'm going to type in the URL of the video, but then here in the comment box, what I'm going to share are maybe some review questions, or maybe a paragraph of information that I want them to read prior, or hey, you're about to watch this 10-minute video. Here are some of the key points I want you to look out for. Now, the kid is going to get a message similar to this. This is actually my personal one. This is not my school one. But let's say this is the one they get, right? So they see my post. This is from a gaming website. The kids then have the option to comment, hey, Mr. Schaefer, I just watched that video. Don't understand what I'm watching here. Can you maybe make sure tomorrow in class you talk a little bit about point A or point B, which is really helpful to them. So we're going to go back to my presentation. There we go. Right? And so, again, it is limitless because I can share a PDF file, I can share a Google Doc, I can share a link to a website, a link to a video, a calendar event. Hey, we've got a meeting after school for student government tomorrow, and share that calendar event right through Google. For me, again, I am a 21st century teacher. I enjoy the content that is on YouTube, and for me, YouTube being a Google app just works perfectly with this. If I come across a YouTube video, I don't need to copy and paste the link into my Google Plus page. I can do it right from YouTube. If you've ever gone to the Share This Video feature, Google Plus, even though Google is theirs, is the third option here. And that link right there, I could either copy and paste into Google Plus and share it from there, or just hit the Google Plus tile, and that would share it right away. And again, great. I'm going to see how many kids have viewed it and shared on that too. So again, as I said, I can save that comment box for questions, information that I want them to see, things like that. So when I present my notes, and I will tell you that I'm not someone who teaches a course that requires a lot of notes. I have presentations that I want them to watch, and usually those are embedded activities that I want them to go through. But if you were a math teacher, or I was previously a social science teacher, I have tons of notes. And I don't want my students writing notes all day, right? Especially if I'm going to flip my classroom, right? I want there to be activities that are done all day long rather than notes. And so what I do is I turn my notes either from a Google Doc, or if it's something I photocopied, I'll turn into a PDF file and share directly through here. So now, this is a lesson, or this was a week where I was teaching about population density in Japan. This was my social science class. And so I chose this particular screenshot to show you the variety of things that I could share here and that my students could see. So we were talking about fertility rates. And so there's a presentation I created through Google Slides. Thomas Malthus and overpopulation was another Google slide that I created. But then where we have population density case study, that was a textbook, 4 pages in the textbook that I wanted them to read. So rather than saying, go to your textbook and read it, because they never bring their textbooks, I photocopied them. I don't want to make copies and waste paper, so I uploaded them here. Literally 4 seconds it took me to upload them, share them. Now the kid reads it. Again, Mr. Schaefer, I don't understand what I read, or can you address that tomorrow in class? I can then even post my own questions and expect feedback, and that's what I'll get to in a second. We've also got videos here and different articles that are from the web. And you can even see in the bottom one, we were talking about the fact that in Japan, why are they so healthy? The fact that they're living till their late 90s is because, in part, because they're wearing masks when they go outside and they're not catching diseases. So I had a student who commented on a question I had asked, and she's like, oh, wearing a mask is a good idea in Japan because it's very, whatever she wrote, right? But the point is that I can now track that. I can look at it, I can comment back. I want to make sure that the feedback is recorded and it gives them a way for two-way feedback. I don't just want to put an A on the top of a paper and say, great job. I want to give them some specific feedback. This allows me to do that, plus get their responses, and they can comment back. So the other couple months ago, this is at the end of last year, I think this is when I presented at another conference. I was going to be absent. Maybe this was not a conference because it's unexpectedly. I think this was an illness I had, right? So I wasn't going to be in class, and at 10:30 at night, I knew that. Now, I could email the sub-coordinator who is going to email the teacher who's going to sub for me, and hopefully they will print out my materials and distribute it correctly with the proper instructions. But I am anal retentive, and I am OCD, and I don't want to rely on anybody else to get my job done. So if I'm going to be absent, I sort of feel like it's my responsibility to speak directly to the students, let them know, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, here's what I expect you to get accomplished, and then there's no room for, oh, but the sub didn't tell us. I want to avoid that at all costs, because if I waste a day because I was absent, now I feel guilty. And so this allows me the liberty to at least say to the kids, why didn't you get that done, guys? I told you to do it. And the kids have been trained. I keep calling them kids. They're not little baby kangaroos or goats or whatever kids are. They're students, right? And so they're trained that every morning when they come into class, the first thing they do is they upload, go to Google+, check what's there. Upload your homework from last night and share it with me. Check out what I've shared with you. If I've left you comments last night, you have 5 minutes to address those comments. You don't need to fix it in 5 minutes, but write me back and say, Schaefer, I just noticed that you commented on my assignment. Here's what I'm planning to do to fix it, or thanks for the positive feedback, or whatever the case may be. So again, a great way for communication, and that's all this is. It's a communication tool, and it's one that literally has transformed my life. So this is a quote from Elon Musk, and this quote is something that I thought was important in regards to the importance of feedback. And at our school, this is something that we are doing. We have teachers who are using Notability to do this. For me, this is my comfort zone. Because we are a Google school, the kids are expected to use Google. We all have Gmail accounts. So I wanted to keep it all in the family. I wanted to make sure that we were just, again, I'm a believer in if we introduce too many different things, then we're just going to confuse people and it's not going to work. So if we can keep it contained with what we're already doing as a school, But I really do believe that for me to be able to give them feedback in a way that's recorded, documented, my principal knows that I've done it. We have another philosophy at our school where every 6 weeks, as a progress report, we leave comments. Our teachers are expected to leave a paragraph's worth of comments for every single student. I have 100 students every single trimester. And truthfully, in a 12-week course, it's week 6 before I know every single one of my kids. By week 12, they're gone. So if I'm going to leave accurate, fair, valuable comments for these parents about their students, I want to make sure that it's based on something more than, I think I remember your kid, they're doing a great job, way to go, keep up the great work. I don't want that to be the message that I send. So how does this help me? If I've been tracking all their work, if I've been leaving them feedback on all their work, it's now 6 weeks in. I average about 3 assignments per week. We now have 18 assignments where I've left them feedback. My comments, where it takes another teacher a week to write 100 comments, takes me about 3 hours, because I just go to each one of their pages. I look at every single assignment I've left feedback on, copy it, paste it, edit it so it all sounds right, and I'm done. I'm not starting from scratch, and that's really what's helped me get through that phase, which is very stressful at our school. So I mentioned earlier that one of my early teaching strategies was Jeopardy. As a social studies teacher, lots of content. I felt that if tomorrow was a test, I needed to make sure that they were ready. How do you make sure your students are ready for a multiple choice test? Because that's what all great teachers are doing, right? Play Jeopardy the day before, because that's really going to prepare the kids, and if they can win my Jeopardy game, they're just going to kill that test tomorrow. That was year 1 through year 4, right? I'm now on year 10. I'm not there anymore, and no disrespect to anyone who is still there, but there's hope, right? You can get out of that. So this is what I transformed in, and I don't know that this is going to work for everybody, but it works for me. Prior to a test, maybe 3 days, because this is not something I think can be done in one night. 3 days, I might have 20 review questions. They are not multiple choice style questions. They are broad-based questions that you better have been paying attention for the last 3 weeks prior to the test. So now we've got these 20 what we could call essential questions because they're open-ended. These kids can give me answers and it'll never be enough. I will always comment back. But here's what we're looking at. I give them a simple question. Places can fall into a variety of different regions. Why would we want to do this? Brady McGettigan, she gives me a nice paragraph about her answers, and then I comment on her. And then another student jumps in. And this is the value of the circle, because all of us in the classroom are connected via the circle. So if I share a post like that question, and everyone in my class can see it, then everyone in that circle can also see what their classmates have commented on. So now my question is not to one student, but it's to every student. The way I get around this is I assign every student a question. So you're responsible for that one question, but the test is in 3 days, so you're responsible for every question. But Brady's got to monitor this. So this was Brady's question, which I know this because she's the first one to respond to it. So I responded, and Richard is allowed to chime in, but Brady ultimately is the one who owns this question, and she's got to be the come in at the end and summarize what the full answer would be. And again, it's open-ended, so there never would be a true, real answer. I'm just trying to get them to give me back as much as they can remember from the content. And again, we could do this in a Jeopardy game, but it's multiple choice, one answer, no room for feedback, and it's not documented, and it's not participating, right? If it's Jeopardy, I got it right, end of discussion. Here, you may have gotten 90% of the answer, but we're going to continue this conversation until we get 110% of what I'm looking for, right? Give me more. So my favorite feature, what I use more than anything, is the student profile. So I don't know what it looks like in your house when you're grading, but I can tell you that for me, that book bag or this briefcase that I used to carry home with hundreds of pieces of paper now only contains my laptop and my iPad and my connections and all the things that I want, but none of the paperwork. Because every single assignment my students do, just like I share them through Google+, they send through Google. So they create it in Google Drive, or they create an iMovie, or they create anything, really, anything. They can upload to their Google Drive and then share via Google+. by literally going to their page, uploading the link, and pasting it and sharing it. It takes them about 4 seconds. 4. So this is Sam's page. I get home, I got to do my grades. I got to enter grades into the grade book because this feedback is great, but my principal expects grades. So I go to Sam's page, I scroll down, and I'm going to actually pull up Sam's page live. Now this was a student who took my class over the summer. He's getting ready to go to college. He's going to be able to take this with him when he goes because it's all documented on Google. So Sam in my class created a logo for his page because I teach a personal branding course now. He can track how many people have viewed his page. So as a student with 12,000 views, that means I've looked at his work a lot, but his classmates are also looking. Right? So here's all of his content. He plays the drums. He wants us to know it. So here's a video that he put on YouTube, and he shared it through Google+. He's playing some Rage Against the Machine, not a bad band. Right? Now, I watched this video. This was, what, October 19th, so a couple months back. This was something he was going to be sending to his college of choice. He's going to Stanford in just a couple of months. And he's going to be, pretty soon, probably the announcer for the Florida Marlins. But he's a broadcaster. And so this is awesome. I wish I was Sam Gelfand. Just a little bit of positive reinforcement. He's not my student, but just seeing that gives me the opportunity. Now, because I'm actually accessing this through my personal Gmail, I'm not looking at what he shared with me as a teacher. That's something that you do want to pay attention to if you're using this personally and in the school setting, is that you don't get those confused. So because I signed out of my school one, we're only seeing what Sam has shared with the world. We're not seeing what he shared individually with me. But again, that brings us back to this. And if I were to scroll down on that page, I would see all the documents that he shared, and I'd be able to leave him that feedback right from there. Now, Google Hangouts, this is something that if you don't know about it, it is amazing. You are a science teacher and you want to get someone from NASA into your classroom, good luck unless you live in Orlando doing that. Or maybe Texas, right? Alabama, that would be a good one too. But outside of those regions, it's going to be pretty difficult. Now, Google Hangouts has this capability of basically being group Skype or group FaceTime, if you're familiar with what that means. And so the idea here is that you could bring a professional into your classroom and you can get this done pretty quickly. And so I have a quick video here that'll just give you an introduction to what Google Hangouts is in case you don't know. I thought it would be cool for you to see. And then I'll show you what we're using it for in class.
Today we did a virtual field trip. Schools from across the country were able to join us via a Google Hangout. It's really easy to connect us with the whole wide world.
Do octopuses see in color?
Ah, very good question. Actually, no, they do not. They are colorblind.
And we are, for the first time in history, with this space station, we're leaving Earth. And it is just too good an experience not to share it.
You want to say hello to Max? Say hi, Max.
Hi, Max. Hi. There you are. Hi. Wonderful. Hi, everyone.
So I just wanted to show you that in my classroom, how has this been found? How has this been used? I want to tell you that it was done by accident. I was giving a test, and the kids didn't feel as if they were prepared for it. So I get to school the day of the test, and I say, "Hey guys, were you studying last night?" And they said, "Mr. Schaefer, you got to find this out at Google Hangouts. We had a group study session at 11 o'clock last night." So one student was looking at my notes. Another student noticed that they were online because it shows you who's connected to Google+. And they noticed that each of them were on, so they started asking each other questions. Another student who was procrastinating studying for my test jumped onto Google Plus just to look at my notes, noticed that those two kids were online, and they literally, with 17 kids, had a group study session from like 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning, but I didn't believe it. So I said, guys, can you pull that up? So they did, and I printed it out. It was 7 pages of them asking each other questions and responding, and I wasn't even there. It was amazing for me as an educator to see that my kids maybe procrastinated, which doesn't show me that they cared all that much, but the fact that they were able to utilize each other as a tool, to me, was awesome. Now, I only have about 10 minutes left, and I did want to take some questions, but before I got there, there may be someone out there right now who's saying, this is great, but don't you know that social media is dangerous? And I am a personal branding instructor. That's my job. I teach kids about safe use online. So I didn't want this presentation to end without you knowing that before I let my kids on Google+, in my trust, I make sure that we talk about digital citizenship. Because there is potential for these kids to abuse or misuse, and I don't want to be the one responsible for that. And that mentioning earlier when I said I'll be standing at the front and someone will type, hey, that teacher's going bald, they think they're being funny. That turns into a lesson about being respectful online, making sure you realize that what you type there is now there forever. Because when I turn around and I look at that and they are like, oh no, I didn't know that was going to still be there when he turned around, that turns into this lesson on literacy and safety. The truth is, my whole course is that. So for any of you who do plan to implement something like this, I would recommend making sure you spend at least some time talking to the kids about the importance of digital citizenship and ethics online. It's super important. So I have 10 minutes, and I would hope that some of you would have questions about how I've used this, how you might be able to implement this into your classroom, and maybe what we can do to help you. I do have a business card. If there's anybody here who would like to connect after the fact, find out more about how I use it or get some one-on-one, I would love to help you and reach out to you. So please feel free to ask me for a card afterwards. Yes, sir?
Yeah, we went a couple of years ago, we came to school, and all the kids have, I teach the middle school, so we all have Gmail accounts, and we're using Drive a lot, and now, of course, Google Classroom, some teachers are using that. In your opinion, is this more dynamic than Classroom to you?
So he asked me if this is a different or dynamic approach to using Google Classroom, which is sort of the hot ticket item right now. And the truth is that I was the first person at my school to sign up for Google Classroom. And when I was accepted to be a tester, I tried it out for a couple of weeks and said I'm doing more on Google+. So for those of you who are currently using Google Drive, this is something that only takes 1 second of tweaking to change what you're doing. Because for me, the difference between this and strictly using Google Drive by itself as a standalone is that when my students come to my classroom, they've used Google Drive in another classroom. When they go to share something, what they're doing is they're typing my email address underneath where it says, who do you want to share this with? So what I got my first few months of trying this was just an overwhelming amount of emails, but it didn't track them. What Google Plus allows them to do is to say, and I tell my kids, do not put my email address down there. What you want to do when you create a document or a spreadsheet or a Google drawing is you want to click on the top right where it says share, get editable link. So they get that link rather than just typing my email address and it sends me an email, so-and-so has given you access to their document. They're actually taking the link, pasting it onto their news feed on Google Plus and sharing it with me there. And that's what creates that binder, if you want to call it that portfolio of their work, which to me is more valuable because if it was just a Google Doc, I could comment on a document if they gave me permission, right? One of the permissions on Google Docs is editing, commenting, or just viewing. So when I first started using Google, we would use that comment feature. So what happens? I comment as a teacher, and the only person who can see the comments are the people who created the doc. But I want this to be something I can share with parents. I want when parents come in, open house, pull up their kid, their student, I keep doing that, and all of a sudden now they've got a working portfolio. If I would have just shared it in Google Drive, I would have to go in my email or go into my Google Drive with all the shared documents. It becomes a mess. For me, this 1, 2, 3, I mean, it would change your life, seriously, if you're using Google already. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, so she's referring to the fact that maybe you don't want all your students to see it. And so there are two things I would address. Number one is I have the exact opposite philosophy. I want everything to be open. I want every student to see everybody else's work for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want them to do peer reviews, right? So I want my students who are writing an essay, and I truthfully don't give a lot of essays, but if I did, I would want my students to see each other's essays. Not because I assume that they're going to copy off each other, but if I tell my students, hey, you're going to post your essay to Google+, they may, by nature, be fearful of the fact that everyone can see it, and now not just one person could potentially call them out for plagiarism, but 30. And so my philosophy is just a little bit different than yours, but I totally understand why, as an English teacher, that would be something. But again, for me, Google Classroom is that sort of private thing, whereas I really do want this to be a lesson in social media as well. So that idea of sharing content, sharing information, for me is something that is invaluable because of the nature of what I teach. So we do have a teacher who is a colleague of mine. His name is Bill Parsons. He uses Google Classrooms, I think, right? And loves it. Also uses Google Plus and loves it. And I think it's one of those things where you play around and you see what works best for you. I think as long as we can all agree, because they're listening, that we love Google, then they'll be kind to us and they'll keep coming out with great, cool tools and stuff like that. Yes, sir?
Those 500,000 or so hits that you've got, do the analytics let you know how many of them were yours and break it down as to which students are more active than others?
It does not. It does not. That would be a cool feature, maybe an upgrade for the future. I personally use services like Clout for my Facebook and my Twitter because I want to know who's looking at my things. But for this, I haven't noticed. But it doesn't take long as a teacher to know who's looking at your stuff, because by week 12, I still have students who might not be sharing things correctly. I have students who are never posting their work until the last week of school. So it does become an issue that way as far as who's looking. But as a teacher, being in the field for 10 years, you get an idea who's looking at your things. It's also nice because when I'm walking around the classroom, I know what I'm looking for. So if we're a 1-to-1 school, we're also a 2-to-1 school in some subjects or in grade levels. And so when I'm walking around, my students are expected to be on Google Plus or on the stuff that I've shared with them via Google Plus. So it's easy for me to sort of get a glimpse as to what they're doing because I know what to look for. But again, how you use this, why you would use it, in my career, what's changed for me, number one, is taking those papers home. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted it. I'm carrying this MacBook Pro. It weighs like 12 pounds. That was enough for me. I also wanted, when those parents came in front of me, to be able to have evidence of student work and growth. And for the fact that I'm looking at what these kids are doing. These students are creating a lot of things that I expect them to do. And if I'm taking the time to leave them feedback, rather than doing it on the top of a piece of paper that they're going to crumble up and throw in their bag, now it's documented, now it's there. And for me, it's something that I couldn't live without. And so I want to thank everybody for coming this afternoon. I know that it's late in the day, and many of you guys probably chose this over something else that would have interested you. I hope this is something that you can use. And again, I invite you to reach out. I'm on Twitter, Schaefer_Jason. I also have a card that you guys can use if you would like to contact me for more. Yes, ma'am.